Every 4 years, the world stops, not for politics, not for technology, not for war or peace or any election. It stops for football, and in 2026, it stops for 104 matches across 3 nations, 48 teams chasing one dream, and a final in New York City that the entire planet will watch at the same time, holding its breath. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Out of 48 nations, only a handful truly believe they can win it. Not hope, not dream, believe, and belief in tournament football is the difference between a quarter-final exit and a trophy parade. I've spent weeks going through the data, the squad depth charts, the tactical setups, the psychological profiles of managers under pressure, and what I found wasn't just rankings, it was stories, 5 nations carrying the weight of history, expectation, and in some cases, something far heavier than football. Let me take you through them not as a list, but as 5 different kinds of pressure, because that's what the World Cup really is, a pressure test, and the team that handles it best lifts the trophy. Here's a question nobody asks about Argentina: is winning the worst thing that ever happened to them? Hear me out. In Qatar 2022, Argentina delivered what many consider the single greatest individual World Cup performance in history. Lionel Messi, exhausted, aging, desperate, dragged a nation across the finish line on willpower alone. The final against France was chaos, art, and heartbreak compressed into 120 minutes. Argentina won. The world wept. Messi got his trophy. And now every single match Argentina play in 2026 will be measured against that. That's a different kind of pressure, not the hunger of the uncrowned, the burden of the defending champion. At 38, Messi is not the same player. The acceleration is gone. The recovery time between matches is longer. Argentina's coaching staff knows this and has built their entire tournament plan around protecting him for the moments that matter: the last 20 minutes of knockout ties, the penalty shootout walk-up, the one moment of individual brilliance that changes a game. But take Messi out of this entirely and Argentina still have a frightening squad. Alvarez at 24 is one of the most lethal center forwards in European football. He doesn't need Messi, he thrives alongside him. Enzo controls tempo in midfield with the quiet authority of a man twice his age, and coach Lionel Scaloni, who people forget has now won 3 major tournaments, knows exactly how to build a team that doesn't need to dominate possession to win matches. Argentina won't beat you for 2-0, they'll beat you 1-2-0 in the 87th minute with a goal you didn't see coming, and they'll make it look inevitable in hindsight. The real question isn't whether Argentina are good enough, they clearly are. The question is whether a squad that already achieved the ultimate goal 4 years ago can find the same burning motivation again. History says no team has won back-to-back World Cups in over 60 years, but history also once said Messi would never win one. Let's be honest about something. Brazil have been a disappointment at every World Cup since 2002. Not a disaster, a disappointment. There's a difference, and for a country where football is practically written into the national constitution, that difference matters enormously. 2006, quarterfinals, 2010, quarterfinals, 2014, demolished 7-1 at home, a national trauma that's scarred a generation. 2018, quarterfinals, 2022, quarterfinals, 5 tournaments, same ceiling, same heartbreak. So when Ancelotti arrived, the question wasn't about talent. Brazil have always had talent. The question was, can he fix what's actually broken? Carlo Ancelotti has won league titles in England, Spain, Germany, France, and Italy. He's won the Champions League 5 times with 3 different clubs, and crucially, and this is what gets overlooked, he has an extraordinary ability to make world-class players feel individually important while simultaneously playing as a coherent unit. That was Brazil's problem. Too many egos, too much individual expression, too little structure when the pressure arrived. The early signs suggest Ancelotti has changed the culture, not just the tactics, but Brazil's ceiling in 2026 still depends on one player above all others. On his best days, Real Madrid nights in the Champions League, Brazilian evenings when everything clicks, is genuinely unplayable. He runs at defenders like they're standing still. He creates chaos in wide areas that no defensive structure can fully neutralize, and American stadiums, with their vast pitches and quick surfaces, were made for someone exactly like him. The caveat? At a major tournament has been inconsistent. The leap from brilliant club player to decisive international performer is one he hasn't fully made yet. 2026 in front of the watching world might be exactly the stage he needs. Brazil haven't just come to participate, they've come to end 24 years of hurt. The question is whether this time the manager can take them past the ceiling that's defeated every previous attempt. July 2025, Diogo Jota, Liverpool forward, father, one of the most beloved players in the Portugal squad, died in a car accident. That sentence doesn't belong in a football analysis, and yet it's impossible to talk about Portugal in 2026 without acknowledging it. Because that squad will carry that grief into every stadium, every training session, every quiet moment in the dressing room before a knockout tie. Grief is complicated in sport. Sometimes it collapses teams, sometimes it transforms them. This Portugal squad has the talent to go the distance, arguably the deepest they've ever assembled. Consider, even without Ronaldo in the lineup, Portugal's starting 11 on current form might be the most technically gifted at this entire tournament. That's not an insult to Ronaldo, it's a measure of how extraordinary the generation around him has become. Bruno, criminally underrated at international level for years, has quietly become one of the most effective creative midfielders in European football. João Neves, at 20 years old, is already controlling tempo at the highest level of the Champions League. Bernardo Silva remains one of the most complete midfielders of his generation. And Ruben Dias, when fit and focused, is among the best 3 center-backs on the planet. And then there's Ronaldo himself, 41 years old. 6th World Cup, the most decorated individual in the sport's history, and the one trophy, the only trophy he has never won. There's a version of this story where the weight of that absence finally becomes too heavy and Ronaldo's presence at 41 becomes a tactical compromise the team can't afford. And there's a version where the greatest champion in football history, playing in what everyone understands is his final chance, delivers something so extraordinary that we spend the next decade talking about it. Portugal's manager Roberto Martinez has quietly built something real here. Nations League winners in 2025, beat Germany in the semi-final, beat Spain, the best team in Europe, in the final. The mental fragility that haunted previous generations appears to have been addressed for Ronaldo, for Jota, for a nation that has never held that trophy. 2026 is Portugal's moment if they can finally stop finding ways to lose in the quarters. Every generation or so, a team comes along that doesn't just win, they redefine how the game is played. Spain from 2008 to 2012 did it with tiki-taka. Germany in 2014 did it with vertical pressing. And this current Spain team is doing something new, they're winning with joy. There's no other word for it. Watch Lamine Yamal, 17 years old, smile permanently attached to his face, embarrass experienced international defenders in the biggest moments of the biggest tournaments, and you're not watching tactics. You're watching someone who genuinely finds this easy. Yamal scored in the 91st minute of a European Championship semi-final at the age of 16. He didn't celebrate with relief. He celebrated like he'd always known it was going in. That is a different kind of talent. Alongside him, Nico Williams mirrors that explosive directness on the left, 2 teenagers who between them represent the most exciting wide partnership in international football since, arguably, the Ronaldo and Figo era in the late 1990s. But Spain aren't just exciting, they're efficient. In 2024 Euros qualifying, they conceded almost nothing. Rodri, Ballon d'Or winner, the most complete defensive midfielder of his era, controls the game's tempo so completely that Spain often look like they're playing in slow motion while the opposition chases shadows. The question analysts keep returning to is the striker position. Spain plays without a traditional center forward. Their system creates space and overloads through movement, but in a knockout game against a team that defends deeply and absorbs pressure, the lack of a pure goal threat can occasionally expose them. But here's the response to that concern. Spain won 2024 Euros playing exactly this way. They didn't struggle. They didn't scrape through. They dominated. Yamal turns 18 during this tournament. Pedri is 22. Williams is 22. This squad isn't at its peak yet. This is the beginning of something for Spain in 2026. The pressure isn't whether they're good enough. The pressure is living up to being everyone's second favorite. Here's the uncomfortable truth about France. They don't need to be the best team at this tournament to win it. They never have. And that is, paradoxically, the most terrifying thing about them. In 2018, France were not the most exciting team. Croatia played better football in the final. Argentina played better football in the group stage. France won because Didier Deschamps understood something crucial. In a 6-week tournament, results are currency and beauty is optional. In 2022, France were arguably the second-best team. Argentina were better, and yet France still took it to extra time, still scored 3 goals, still pushed the game to penalties. A fraction of a moment separates France from being 2-time defending champions right now. The reason France are everyone's pick in 2026 is simple. They have Kylian. At 27, the peak age for a forward in the prime window of his physical and creative capacity. At Real Madrid, has scored goals that make professional defenders shrug because there's no rational answer to them. His pace over the first 5 meters remains unmatched in the game. His finishing with both feet from any range under any pressure is clinical in a way that cannot be coached. You either have it or you don't. Around him, France have constructed a squad of terrifying depth. Ousmane, perhaps the most underappreciated attacker at this entire tournament, has transformed into a consistent, devastating weapon. Michael Olise from Bayern Munich is the wild card, the player who at his best could make France genuinely unstoppable in the knockout rounds. Defensively, William Saliba has become one of the premier center-backs in Europe. Mike Maignan in goal has put together back-to-back elite seasons. The full-back positions are strong. The bench contains players who would start for most other nations at this tournament. The valid criticism of France is philosophical. Deschamps sometimes contains rather than unleashes this team. France can look frustratingly conservative, almost deliberately withheld, as if the manager is rationing the spectacle for the right moment. At 2020 Euros and 2024 Euros, France genuinely underperformed relative to squad quality. But Deschamps' record at World Cups is unblemished. 1 appearance, 1 trophy. You don't discard that evidence just because the football wasn't always beautiful. France don't care about being loved, they care about being champions. And if the World Cup final on July 19th in New York comes down to 1 moment, 1 sprint, 1 shot, 1 penalty, the smart money says, is involved, 5 teams, 5 completely different kinds of pressure. Argentina carrying the burden of being champions, Brazil carrying 24 years of failure, Portugal carrying grief, legacy, and a 41-year-old's last chance, Spain carrying the expectation of a generation that hasn't peaked yet, France carrying the quiet confidence of a team that believes winning is simply what they do. The World Cup doesn't always go to the best team. It goes to the team that handles the specific pressure of that tournament, that moment, that final. History is full of squads more talented than the team that won. So I'll ask you the same question I've been asking myself for weeks. When New York is loud and the world is watching, and the biggest moment arrives, who actually holds their nerve? Drop your prediction below, and don't just say who you want to win, tell me who you think wins and why. Because in 5 weeks we find out which of these stories has the best ending. Subscribe for full tournament coverage as the 2026 World Cup kicks off.